The Cessna shuddered, a metallic groan echoing through the cabin as the cheerful drone of the engine dissolved into a sputtering cough. Below, the majestic peaks of the Wyoming Rockies, once a breathtaking panorama, now loomed like jagged teeth. Jacob's knuckles whitened against the armrest, his gaze fixed on the pilot, whose face had turned a sickly shade of gray. Beside him, Marilee, her usual vibrant energy replaced by a stark white terror, gripped his hand. "What's happening?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the escalating chaos. "Something's wrong with the engine," Jacob replied, his voice tight. The plane lurched violently, plunging into a sickening spiral. The pilot, a young man named Will, wrestled with the controls, his strained cries lost in the roar of the wind. Then, a deafening crash, a jarring impact that sent them reeling, and blackness. When Mark regained consciousness, the world was a blur of shattered glass and twisted metal. The cabin was a mangled ruin, the scent of gasoline and burnt metal thick in the air. Will lay slumped over the controls, his head at an unnatural angle, neck broken, dead. Marilee, her face streaked with shock, stirred beside him. "Jacob?" she croaked, her voice weak. They were alive, but stranded. The plane, a broken husk amidst the towering, unforgiving peaks. A quick inventory revealed minor injuries, scrapes, bruises, a possible sprained ankle for Marilee. Jacob looked around for wood to make a fire. Their survival kit, a meager collection of supplies, seemed pitifully inadequate against the vast, desolate landscape. The first night was a symphony of howling wind and biting cold. They stayed in the wreck that night to escape the cold and wind. Sleep was fleeting. They huddled together in the wreckage, sharing a thin blanket, the silence broken only by the occasional snap of a twig or the distant cry of a predator. Their marriage, already strained by years of unspoken resentments and simmering discontent, felt like a fragile thread in the face of this overwhelming isolation. As days turned into nights, the wilderness began to take its toll. The meager rations dwindled, and the cold seeped into their bones. Marilee's ankle swelled, turning a ghastly purple, and Jacob's hands were raw and bleeding from scavenging for firewood. The silence between them grew, heavy with unspoken accusations and regrets. Then, the whispers began. It started subtly, a faint rustling in the wind, a barely perceptible murmur that seemed to emanate from the shadows. But it grew, becoming a distinct voice, a low, guttural growl that seemed to slither through the trees, weaving its way into their nightmares. "They're here," Marilee whispered, her eyes wide with terror, staring into the impenetrable darkness beyond the wreckage. "They're watching us." "Who?" Jacob asked. "Those in my nightmares." Jacob, initially dismissing her fears as the product of stress and exhaustion, began to see it too. Shadows that moved when they shouldn't, the feeling of being watched, the unnerving silence that was punctuated by the sound of something breathing. One night, as Jacob and Marilee huddled around a flickering fire, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by shadows, its eyes glowing with an eerie luminescence. It moved with an unnatural grace, its presence radiating an aura of cold, malevolent power. Marilee screamed, a raw, primal sound that echoed through the mountains. Jacob, his heart pounding in his chest, grabbed a makeshift spear, his hands trembling. The figure didn't attack. It simply stood there, watching, its presence a chilling reminder of their vulnerability. The entity seemed to feed on their fear, growing stronger as their hope dwindled. The whispers intensified, morphing into taunts, accusations, echoes of their past failures and regrets. Their marriage, already fractured, began to crumble completely. One night, merrily, driven to the edge of madness by the entity's relentless torment, turned on Jacob, her eyes filled with a chilling emptiness. "It's your fault," she hissed, her voice a distorted echo of her own. "You brought us here." Jacob, his own sanity fraying, recoiled in horror, but didn't argue. Knowing her stress was driving her deep fears, the entity had turned them against each other, exploiting the cracks in their relationship, amplifying their deepest fears and insecurities. The couple, reasoning that they needed to leave their small encampment, took what was left of the supplies in the plane and started down the mountain through a thick forest. Marilee's ankle had healed enough for her to support her own weight. Jacob, recalling his Boy Scout training, was able to make snares to catch game for food. They chanced across an abandoned hunting cabin in the woods. It was a godsend to the cold, starving couple. Building a fire in the rusty wood stove warmed them like they haven't been warmed in days. Jacob found an axe behind the cabin to help in getting firewood. Small game was scarce. Jacob had to plod through snow further each day to find food. The climax arrived during a raging blizzard. The wind howled like a banshee, the snow a blinding white curtain that obscured everything. The entity, now a tangible presence, stalked them through the storm, its growls a chilling counterpoint to the wind's fury. They faced it, not as a couple, but as two broken individuals, their relationship shattered by fear and resentment. The entity seemed to revel in their despair, its presence a dark reflection of their own inner turmoil. This thing that haunted the couple would rage at them over the roar of the storm, breaking their spirits to nothing more than melted puddles, like snow that sifted through the cracks in the cabin walls and landed by the stove to melt. In the end, it wasn't a rescue that came, but a grim acceptance. They were left to the mountains, a testament to what happens when you bring broken things into places meant to break them further. Both descend into madness, never to see civilization again. The mountains kept their secrets and their bodies.